I'm sure you understand that this was at one time a mining camp, and the reason that it was populated was because of the mine. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been here. The mine was a lead and zinc mine. Started out gold and silver, and then they deepened the shaft early on and found lead and zinc. And so between 1934 and 39, it became Arizona's leading lead and zinc mine. These tailings that you see and that you'll be sleeping on tonight in your tents, the ore was crushed here as much as it could be at the time, and the concentrates were hauled to a place called Amado. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's about 50 some odd miles east of here. And it was put on rail. The lead was, well, both of them were put on railroad cars. The lead went to El Paso and the zinc went to Amarillo because that was the only smelter in this part of the United States at that time that could process zinc. The mining operation slowed down considerably during 1929 and 1933-34, but they were enlarging the mill, and so there were several families here at that time. And then when Ruby began to emerge from the Depression, people began hearing that there was work here, and so they'd come out and get a job working in the mine or the mill. Many stayed and didn't leave until 1948. The Ortiz family was here until 1948, but the gates were closed in about 1942. Arizona law at that time said that if you had 12 children or more in a school, you had to keep the school open. So the school stayed open until 3 8th graders graduated, and that brought the enrollment down below 12 students, and so at that time the school was closed. This was a great place to grow up. I didn't realize at the time because I was 9 when we left here. The reason the mine shut down was because the ore began to give out, and so people started leaving little by little. And we left in 1938. I was 9 years old. At school, we played things like kickball, jacks. The girls played jacks. Every young elementary school age kid, not the older boys played basketball and that sort of thing, but the younger kids played marbles. That was really a popular activity for the boys. When you live in a small community like this, when you live in a small isolated community like Ruby was, you know everybody, everybody knows you, everybody is concerned for your well-being, and you are concerned for other people's well-being. So there was this slide that I mentioned, and when I started school in 1935, first grade, grades 1 through 8, not kindergarten, but just grades 1 through 8, my parents had said, particularly my mother said, I don't think it's a good idea to go down that slide because it's high off the ground, and it's a long slide, and you could fall and hurt yourself and so forth and so on. And so I look back now and I think, for a little kid, I was pretty darn good not to go up that slide. But I had all these friends who went up the slide, and so one day when I came back after lunch, I was standing on the northeast corner outside watching the kids go up and down the slide. And finally, and they were saying, come on, Taya, go up, come on up the slide. So finally I did. And I got up to the top, and it was really high off the ground for me at that time. And I looked back down, and I wanted to climb back down, but everybody else was behind me, and they wouldn't move out of the way so I could go down the ladder. So anyhow, I went down the slide. And I had the ride of my life. It was great. And I went again and again and again, and then the bell rang, and so we lined up at our respective doors of our classrooms. The mine whistle blew. I met my dad at the gate, and we walked home together. we walked in the house, and my mother greeted us, and then she said, "I heard you went down the slide today." So there I was, nailed. She didn't punish me, but she said, "Well, you know, you could get hurt going down that slide."
I'm interested in, what was the water pretty much like it is today? Did you guys have wells, or were you drinking out of this? Or
No.
was it piped in and stuff to haul it?
In 1928, my dad was asked to design a route that a pipeline would take from a well west of the Santa Cruz River to over the Atascosa Mountains and into Ruby, and the tank where the water was stored is, there's a lot of trees there, but you can see a portion of it. But that's a 5,000 gallon tank up there, and that's where the water was stored. So anyhow, he mapped and hiked and camped along the way, and when he found a route that he was comfortable with, they started building the pipeline. The pipe was purchased from the Texas oil fields. The inside diameter of their pipe is 4 inches in diameter. It was manufactured, the pipe was manufactured in Youngstown, Ohio, and the reason I know that is because John Dell and I, a friend of mine, hiked into Hell's Gate Canyon and Peck Canyon, and we found pieces of pipe, took pictures of it, and so forth and so on. This is whatever they did, because there was electricity in the mine for the operation of the elevator. But anyhow, we would go down in the mine, or they would go down in the mine, and there were levels. There were different levels. There were 9 levels. The mine was 750 feet deep, probably 800 feet deep, because they usually, when they're digging a shaft like that, they usually have a 50-foot margin. The ore was brought up in ore buckets and dumped into the trucks that hauled the concentrates to Amado. And these trucks, incidentally, carried 10 tons of ore, and the trailer the truck was pulling, carried 5 tons of ore. So each time they left out of here, they were carrying 15 tons of ore, but it was put on railroad cars and sent to either El Paso or Amarillo. And then on the way back, they didn't want to come back with empty trucks, and so they would load them with large timbers, and they were stored, these timbers were stored on the mine pad and used to shore up the earth down in the mine. So that's how, and to haul those concentrates, the charge back in those days was $4.50 a ton.
Okay, on 3. Okay, 1.
Well, I mean, like, you don't really have high and low chords. You have...
Good morning. I'm tired as hell. Did you stay up all night? Why? Did you sleep okay?
Yeah, I only made enough.
I had really bad dreams.
You do it. What time do you get to school?
Always living right there.
Best friend. What? What has the most sugar and corn syrup?
Well, they need that. They do. So we can go straight. Yeah.
It'll be fun, no matter what. I thought I'd give you a brief introduction to the refuge and to what the Cienega is, and then talk about the strategy. for this morning. This is the eastern flank of Buenos Aires National Wildlife Refuge. Most of the refuge is to the west of here, and it's grassland. So you'll be in the grassland section tomorrow. Here it's what we call a riparian ecosystem. Do you know what the term riparian means?
Shane, doesn't it mean river based?
Yeah, it's related to stream or river or wetland habitat. And the cienega here catches water from the watershed over to the east and south, and then eventually forms a stream called Arivaca Creek to the west of here. So the wetlands we have left are quite valuable to us and to wildlife. Anywhere there's water, wildlife are going to be attracted. There's a lot of species diversity here. That means a lot of different kinds of animals, a lot of different kinds of plants, especially bird life, attracted to wet areas, which in turn bring in a lot of insects and plant material.
Hey, you can ask somebody else.
It's cool. Come on, check it out. They can't get you.
Well, just like the water part.
That
Waving
one's
in the
not
wind.
alive.
Hey,
Some of them are alive, some of them are not.
Mr. Dust Bunny.
I love having fun. Like, oh my gosh.
Isn't it cool?
They're
Yeah.
much more fun to look at if you use a hand lens, so you can really see stuff.
See.
Great job.
Look at it.
So these different aquatic insects have different ways of feeding, which is kind of cool. This one, the water boatman, is mostly an algae eater. So if you look down here, you'll see a rock, and they're all clinging to the rock. They kind of hang out on the bottom. These guys
Cool.
are hunters.
That's
They're
these guys are these
predaceous
guys.
diving beetles, and they actually will dive down and look for
The
other
water
things.
boatman.
And I've been told if you take a couple of tanks full of little insects like this and leave them like that for a week, the predaceous beetles will eat everything else. There'll be one guy left in the end because they all eat each other.
Oh, that's not cool.
So that's the little guy in here with the spots on him. Kind of fun because some of them are not. You can't see them down there. So.
Jason, are we having lunch after this?
And, I'd say that the feathers are the main thing. Yes, they have wings. There are some other critters that have wings that fly. Some insects, of course, bats. There are some gliding mammals, and of course, flying mammals, bats. But feathered flight, that's only with birds. Here's a complete skeleton of a hummingbird. Just really, really tiny and amazing.
The rhyolite is sometimes, especially in Babukivari, it's squeezed up where the volcano the ground keeps expanding and makes cracks, and then there'll be the hot magma will come up and harden. So that's the igneous rocks are your volcanic rocks, and there's a lot of granite. Has little crystals in it.
And some of it, like that tuff, it shot out of the volcano so fast that there's really hardly any time at all for cooling to occur. So you don't really see any kind of crystals in it at all. It's just like a big chunk of cement in a way.
And then you have the metamorphic, and those are rocks that have changed. You know, we're a big rock recycling machine, the Earth.
Or they can be tadpoles.
Look at Jason. Are you want fish? Jason's such a show. Sup?
The interesting thing about a bat skeleton, does a bat have fingers?
Yeah.
They actually do have fingers. How many do you think they have?
5.
They have 5, just like a human, right? So if you look at the bat skeleton, if you were to reach your arm out and your fingers went all the way down to your feet, that's what a bat's hand looks like. So its wing is actually made up of its fingers. It flies like this, right? It's kind of cool. The pronghorn is the only horned animal that actually sheds its horn, which makes it pretty unique, right? It has a little bit of bone underneath it, but it'll shed its horn and then regrow them. And you notice their eye, if you look at the difference between the eye cavity on a mountain lion and a javelina, who has better vision? Mountain lion for sure. They don't rely on sight so much, but they have a pretty good sense of smell, right? And they have a scent gland. Have you guys heard about that? They're actually pretty stinky. On their back, they have a little scent gland, and they're able to squirt that out and sort of mark their territory and let people know that they're there.
slideshows into this recently, so I'm not as technologically advanced as you guys, for sure. What the first part of this show will tell you is how my wife Anna and I got involved in doing research. Started out for jaguars, find if we had any jaguars in southern Arizona, and then evolved into a 25 species research project. So we'll concentrate the first part of the show on introducing you to some animals that live out here that you probably, some you're familiar with and some you may not be. On September 25th, the Macho A walked in front of one of Emil's cameras. And 4 hours later, on the same camera, the same night, another jaguar walked in front of this camera.
How could you tell the difference?
Well, we'll get into that a little bit later, but it's spot pattern identification.
Is there like a noticeable difference between their spots? Is there any way we could see that?
Well, we'll show you that in a little while. It's coming up. But anyway, we named this guy Macho B because he was the second jaguar ever photographed on the study. And you know, we talked about males being territorial earlier. Well, we've never seen Macho A since. So we got concerned about his health. Game and Fish went in and found him and discovered that he was ill. And they recaptured him, put him on a helicopter, flew him to Phoenix to their excellent veterinarian staff up there. While he was still under sedation, they took blood samples from him to assess his general health and found out that he had severe advanced kidney failure and was just about ready to die, and so they ended up putting him on to sleep. It's kind of a sad ending in a way for Macho B, but like we said, he's 16 years old and he was going to die within 6 months anyway with this kidney.
That was Macho A.
Macho B. He was going to die anyway, so we kind of think that old Macho B, you know, he's been watching Emil and I out here in these hills for many years. I think he knew more about us than we knew about him. That concludes our program, and the rest of the stuff is just acknowledgments, and if you want to look at them, fine. If not, but you're going to get a sense that it takes a lot of people and a lot of agencies to do the work we're doing and to make conservation work. So if you leave here with anything, it's if you want to get involved in the environment, try to do it in a cooperative way.